Welcome back to the last little bit, the bow that goes on the end of this entire sort of production. So the hat mic is off, which means that we are done. You can tell that I'm excited because I've actually remembered to turn on the leg, which I don't always remember how to do. So very short, what I want to do is go through where we ended up and also give you a couple little sort of lessons that I learned along the way in making this crazy thing that may help or hinder you in your own quest for pedalboard mastery. Anyway, so where did we end up? 27 different devices powered by 6 devices in the Strymon power system on a single AC cable, with more expansion available if needed for the satellite board. 16 reorderable audio loops. 2 separate MIDI controllers doing different tasks. Full MIDI control of everything, including expression pedals and channel switching for external tube amps and pedals. USB-C hub for easy access to editing software for some devices, and 3 hilariously tiny cooling fans. So it does way more than my original Bradshaw rig ever did, and it sounds better, and it's way slicker and easier to use. Like, I'm seriously excited about programming it. So I can't wait to actually make some music with it. So in terms of the stuff that I've learned and stuff that I've observed in the process of making it, for one, all of the tools that I bought for helping out the build worked out really well. But the winner was absolutely the helping hand soldering station thing that I bought with a really thick metal plate. All the extra little pincers helped holding wires. The magnifying glass with the light on it really helped being able to see. So, man, I have to say, that was the winner. The heat gun worked great. Everything else I bought worked fine, but that helping hand soldering station was an absolute godsend. In terms of the actual lessons I've learned, number 1, all heat shrink is not created equal. The stuff that I used to get when I was soldering studios together back in the day was rubbery and pliable, and you could bend it. It was like a Band-Aid. It was really nice. And when I started using the shrink that I bought for this project, it was really stiff, and as soon as it cooled off, it was really stiff. And I went back and looked at what I ordered, and it's all marine grade, which means that I should have put it on a boat. So if you're going to use heat shrink for a thing like this, make sure it's the rubbery, pliable kind so you can bend cables and things. I wasn't able to use it on the inside of those jacks on the inside of the pedal board. As a result, I had to use electrical tape, which was a drag, but what can you do? Number 2, the USB-C hub in the board, I thought was going to be convenient, but it ended up being a real game changer. It's cool. Like, it was so fun to take one cable, plug it into the laptop, and have control of all the Morningstar devices that I needed to have control over. It was just great. I'm really going to have a fun time programming the board. It's way more fun than just sort of doing it on the devices and, one cable, call it good. It's awesome. Number 3. On a major build like this, it's going to be really important to keep in mind just how many cables you really think you're going to need and the actual size and circumference of those cables. So I think my major blind spot in this entire build was just the sheer number of cables I was going to need. And because I had decided on the Mogami 2524 cable, it's got a big old jacket on it. It's a great cable, and it's great for shielding the input from the ground and that kind of stuff. But in terms of just the sheer size of it, when you start stacking up cable after cable after cable, it was never going to work. And that's why I had to move to the snake cables. So if you can, be better than I was and do some real counting and diligence about just how many cables you're really going to need and what that really means in terms of where they go and the size that they're going to take up. And number 4 is sort of related to that in the sense that if you can, make sure that you have all of the cables you're going to need for the entire build in one color. And the reason I say that is because the bottom of the board looks a little messy, but it's not really as messy as it looks. What makes it look messier is that there's gray cables and red cables and brown cables mixed in with all the black. If everything had been black, you wouldn't notice anywhere near as much of the sort of messiness or the haphazardness that it sort of looks like is there, but it's not really. It's just that you're seeing black and then a red, and then black and then a gray or a brown or something. So keep all of your cables the same color and everything will look way slicker. The fact that I had to teach every stage of the build brings me to number 5. So I would suggest in the real world that you configure all of your MIDI devices and things like that first before you batten them down to the board. I had to sort of do things chronologically so it made sense for the video series, but in the real world, what I probably would have done was set up all of the MIDI devices first, set all the channels, set all the MIDI through, set all of the configurations so that when I put them together, they were all ready to go. Number 6. If you're going to have a situation where you're having as many TRS splitters as I am using on this board, just consider spending a bit of extra money for a few more inches of size on the board and another loop controller, because all of those TRS splitters are what caused a lot of the cable chaos. Half the cables going up to the top deck, half the cables going down to the bottom deck. And once those are all soldered in, it's really difficult to unwind them and get them all perfect and clean and everything. So if they had just simply gone to the bottom deck and just gone to the top deck, everything would have stayed way cleaner. So something to consider. It is more money, but something to consider. Don't forget to measure the lid of your pedal board. The reason I mention that is just because I put one pedal on the top pedal, and when I was testing things out and put the lid on, and it was fine, but the knob arrangement of the other 2 pedals or 3 pedals on the top deck actually changed that. And so the lid is not as happy to close with all of the pedals on there as it was with just the first one. So I've actually changed some knobs on the timeline and the Mobius as a way to get them lower to make the lid fit better, and it fits fine now. But yeah, just that little bit was enough to cause me some pretty serious angst. Anyway. Number 8, trust yourself. If you get tired, stop. The only solder point on the entire build that I actually had to resolder once I thought it was done was the one pin on the 8-channel snake that I talked myself out of doing the way I used to do it while I was soldering it, because it was like 2 in the morning. I was like, oh, it'll be fine. So if you have a schematic, if you have a plan, trust yourself. And if you get too tired, stop. Number 9, I think I'm going to add a couple ML10X banks that I wasn't thinking about doing before. One, I'm going to make some that are rescue presets. So I've talked about that sort of flattened thing before where you want to turn everything off just in case you get in trouble. I'm also going to make a couple that are sort of resets, where the entire board can be set to its default state, the way that it comes up to when you reboot it. And I'm going to basically trigger those from the 2 foot switches on the left and right side of the MC6 Pro. So I can always get to them. If something happens and I'm screwed, bang, I can touch the left-hand side or the right-hand side and call up basically a default reset for everybody. So I get a clean sound and maybe a reverb or something, and it's all back to usual, as opposed to having to swim through banks trying to figure out where I'm supposed to be. So that's one. And the second one is I think I need a bank for jams. So you get to a jam, or you're going to go to a jam, and you think you've got all these sounds across all these banks on your controller, and it would be nice to just cherry pick a few and say, oh, I'd like that one, and I like that one, and I kind of would like that one. And you make sort of like a bank of favorites, and they don't have to be permanent. You can just sort of do it quickly, either at home or right from the unit when you get to the jam, and just make a sort of a bank of 6 or 8 sounds that are kind of your favorites. So if you get to a jam, and it doesn't matter if you're playing ambient or Americana or fusion or whatever, you kind of got your favorite sounds there that are sort of your greatest hits, if that makes sense. And it will work for all sorts of music. So I'm definitely going to do that. And finally, number 10. Remember that this is all supposed to be about music and playing guitar. It's really easy to get lost in the tech dweeb stuff, especially for me. And I've enjoyed this, and I'm so excited about how it came out and how it sounds and everything. However, I probably could have been playing a bit more guitar and soldering a bit less during this entire thing. So just keep that in mind. So I want to thank all the guys that were involved in the pedalboard build that helped. Phil from PedalPad from making the board itself, Spencer from West Coast Pedalboard from helping me get the cables and the ends, Dave Phillips from LA Sound Design for helping me out with the tip about shortening DC cables with the new end. If you want a board like this and it's not something that you're really wanting to do yourself, there are all sorts of people that can help you do that. So the first three that I just mentioned, but there's Greg from Exact, Bob Bradshaw is still around. If you're in Europe, the guys from Gig Rig do a great job. There's Schmidt. There's all sorts of companies that can help you do this. So, if you want something like this and you want this functionality, there are people that can help you do it, and you don't have to do it yourself and inhale as much solder as I did. But hopefully you've gotten something from this, and there is a nugget or two of wisdom in this entire thing somewhere that you can use in your own musical life. And thank you very much for taking the time. Keep an eye out for the jam videos when they come out. Hopefully it will sort of be proof of concept for how the board works and everything. And thank you very much for your time. I will see you again soon. Cheers.